that there's a new edition, African edition of On the Post-Colony, which has just come out. And he tells me he's got another book which is about to be published, called The Critique of Black Reason, which is a translation from a French version, which came out a couple of years ago now, I think. 1913, yeah. Or 2013. That shows you how my students tell me I'm stuck in another century. This explains it all. Apart from being a major intellectual, Achille Mbembe is a public intellectual. In other words, he makes interventions on issues of topical concern. And he's been doing it now with regard to South Africa for quite some time. And the title of his talk today is, of course, extremely topical, because it's called Decolonizing the University. But now, question mark. And I think this is an issue which concerns us all here, especially after the organizing of the students in the Black Student Movement. So, welcome, Achille. It's nice to have you back. This time we decided to not leave him on his own, to give him some company. So we've asked Dr. Nomalanga Mkhize, who's also a public intellectual, to respond. You all know her, so I don't need to introduce her to you. She's one of our own. Please forgive me, I have the flu, so I'm not too coherent. When he gets his paper, Professor Mbembe will speak for 15 minutes, and Nomalanga will then speak for 10 minutes. Okay? We all have to be out apparently at 6:30 because there was some kind of mix-up in the booking. So maybe if you want to start, you can start. You can start. Okay. I'm sorry, you have to make this a bit quicker.
Sorry. First of all, I'm very happy to be back. And of course, I will come back if I were invited again. I would like to thank Michael, Uhuru Institute, and other colleagues who work from here. I would also like to recognize Nomalanga, whose columns I read regularly. And in fact, the latest one, the one that appeared last week, dealt precisely with the issues we'll be examining tonight. When it comes to questions of transformation of South African universities, it seems to me that some kind of consensus, we can call it weak or strong, but in any case, some kind of consensus is finally emerging. What I mean by consensus is a set of propositions. Almost every reasonable person who intervenes on these matters seems to agree with. Whatever the historical and regional specificities of the institutions we belong to, whatever they are, it seems to me that there are at least 7 key areas that require immediate action. And a lot of people now recognize that. What are these 7 areas? The first has to do with the mobilization of funds to diversify our institutions through a new cycle of appointments, especially of black scholars. Which means that transformation will not come cheaply. It costs money, and universities, as well as other institutions, have to mobilize funds to write off this necessary effort. It would be better if this was done, of course, within a renewed effort by our government, but also the business sector, effort to recapitalize our universities. South African universities are in need of recapitalization, a recapitalization that would attend to the needs in terms of infrastructure expansion, but also in terms of a broader project of redistribution of intelligence, which implies the recruitment of a new generation of black scholars. So that's the first area. We won't transform our universities without an injection of new, powerful blood, in this case, black blood. The second area where there is consensus that is emerging has to do with the creation of an enabling environment for promotions for staff already in the system. Since the Rhodes Must Fall movement began, examples of two universities, Wits University and then at UCT, they have suddenly discovered that in fact there are black scholars who have been in those universities for a number of years who should have been promoted long ago. They were not promoted not necessarily because the universities didn't want them to be promoted. There were all kinds of obstacles that stood in face of their being promoted, some of which were as trivial as not having the required information. So the idea is therefore to create an environment where information circulates, people who are already in and who merit to be promoted should be promoted. And as I told you, this is already happening, at least in some institutions. The third, extremely important area is about a mandatory curriculum reform in every school and in every department and in every discipline. We could spend the whole week just working on what curriculum reform might entail, and I'll touch upon that a bit later during the presentation. But what is clear is that we cannot go on with the types of curricula with which we have been working. They are institutions where we are peddling knowledges that are